Forge FC is ready for their upcoming match.
Simply stunning stuff! And finally, their goal! My word, what a rocket!
Now, let's get you up to date with Anthony Urciuoli and Match Day Preview on the Forge Audio Network.
Hello, Forge fans. It's the Forge Audio Network. I'm Anthony Urciuoli. It is the final Match Day Preview of the regular season. You will not get another Match Day Preview until the playoffs. Now, a lot of times you get to the final game of the season and there's not a lot to play for. You might want to give some players some rest. If you're thinking about going to the game, you're saying, I don't know, what's the point? There's nothing really to play for. I'm focused on the playoffs. There is so much to play for on Saturday at 5 o'clock. That's important because it was 4 o'clock. It is now 5 o'clock, and I'll explain why in a moment. Forge FC, home to one of their rivals, Atlético Ottawa, the team that they beat last year to capture their third CPL title. They will play again. This time, though, both clubs have so much to play for. Ottawa is just trying to pull off a miracle and make the playoffs after what's right now looks like an epic collapse. And by the way, we're going to be joined very shortly by Gordon Smith, who is the voice, the color commentator for Atlético Ottawa matches on TSN 1200. Been on many times. Always, I feel smarter every time I speak to him. He just knows so much about the sport, knows so much about the team, has followed them so closely, and he has a rich history of Canadian soccer knowledge. And Gordon's going to join us shortly and maybe make sense of what's happened. Ottawa has fallen off of a cliff. They haven't quite hit the bottom yet, but they are very close, and it will take a miracle at this point. Okay, not an actual miracle, but a virtual miracle for them to qualify for the playoffs. But either way, they will have to win on Saturday against Forge. And if you're Forge, the task at hand, this is everything you play for. This is everything you want as a professional athlete. Complete control over your destination. They don't have to rely on anyone. They don't have to hope a team loses. What they need and what they know they need are 3 points against Atlético Ottawa in order to clinch second place of the CPL table. I remind you every time I speak to you, but it bears repeating. You never know. You might be a new listener or viewer. Finishing in the top two gives you a something that's even better than a bye week in the playoffs, because first place will play second place. The winner, and in this case we know who first place is, it's Cavalry. Cavalry will host that game against either Forge or Pacific, but if Forge can collect all 3 points, they are guaranteeing their spot in that play-in game. And that play-in game, you're not playing to get in the playoffs. You're playing to get into the final. Cavalry would host Forge. One would host two. The winner would go to the final and host the final. All you have to do is win one game and you host a CPL final. That is the destination right now. Getting into second place, getting into that match against Cavalry. The beauty about that second place finish, if you lose that game against Cavalry in the playoffs, that 1v2 game, it's okay. Not the end of the world. You go to the semifinal and you get another chance at getting into the final. Top two is where you want to be. It's where you need to be if you're Forge, and they have that opportunity. They are in complete control. Why are they in complete control? Well, first of all, Forge lost their last match against Halifax. It was a 2-1 loss on the road. I have never felt better about a club after a loss than I did over the weekend. At the end of the day, they deserved more. They did everything they needed to do for the most part. Some bad luck, a call one way or the other. Things just don't go your way. It happens. Sometimes you are the better team convincingly, and you don't get all 3 points. It's okay. It is. It's okay. I feel good after that loss about this club because prior to that loss, they were just on an absolute roll. They had wins against a huge win against Pacific, huge win against Valor. In both of those matches, they overcame so much adversity. It was a character builder. It was a show me matches if you're a coach, right? Show me. Things aren't going our way. Everything seems to be going against us. Show me how you respond. Forge responded, and they brought that game into Halifax. Didn't go their way. They lose 2-1. And here we are. Now, we would be remiss if we did not just lower our heads and put our hands in a prayer. And just not for any kind of religious or spiritual reason. Put your hands together, lower your head, and say thank you. Thank you to Vancouver FC. The reason Forge is still in complete control of their playoff destinies, despite losing their last match, is because Pacific lost at home to the expansion club, Vancouver FC. It was a virtual must-win for Pacific, and they laid an egg at home. They went down 2-0 at one point. BC Derby went Vancouver FC's way, and we need to properly thank Vancouver FC because they have helped. Now, they've also beaten Forge this year, so we're not happy about that, but they made up for it, as far as I'm concerned, by beating Pacific last week. Now, why is Saturday's match, why was it changed from 4 o'clock to 5 o'clock? Because there is another game happening at 5 o'clock. And if you pay attention to this sport, it's very common. There are staggered times in the final matches of the regular season because Pacific, Forge, you don't want them playing at different times. And then, let's say Pacific plays earlier in the day and they lose. Kind of all of a sudden that Forge match loses its luster because it doesn't matter anymore if they win. But you put them on at the same time, and it's exciting. You can watch the scoreboard of the other match while you're watching the Forge match. It's set up perfectly. This is what we want. This is what this new playoff system brings. It's why it was implemented. It creates a little extra excitement at the end of the year. Now, if you're Ottawa, I mean, here's where just slipping off the cliff. It all happened. Well, it's been a culmination of things, but it kind of hit its near conclusion last weekend. Ottawa, they needed a draw for Ottawa would have been perfectly okay because they are battling with York for the final playoff spot. So Ottawa travels to York Lions Stadium, a place where York has struggled all year, needing at the very least a draw to be able to keep themselves their head above water and maintain that playoff positioning. Not only did they lose against York, they gave up a late goal in the dying minutes. It was just heartbreak does not even begin to describe. And all you have to do is go and listen to those post-match press conferences from Atlético Ottawa. You want to talk about a demoralized team. Now, as of right now, we have 5 playoff spots. York has the 5th. Ottawa, 2 points back. So they need to beat Forge for 1. There's no negotiation there. They need to, at the very least, they have to win. Or they have no shot. So they have to beat Forge. They have to beat a Forge club that is also playing for this isn't like a Forge club resting players. Forge, they need these 3 points. So Ottawa now has to go to Tim Hortons Field, try to secure all 3 points because they need all 3. And they have to hope that York loses this weekend. So it's a tall order. They're asking a lot. And Forge will be hoping that Pacific loses to Cavalry, but the challenge there is the side from Calgary. They have absolutely nothing to play for. They've clinched the regular season trophy. They're 10 points up on Forge. They've had a remarkable maybe one of the best regular seasons, and actually probably the best regular season in CPL history. That's it. Their job's done. They don't need to beat Pacific. They could spoil things, but it doesn't matter to them ultimately. So Forge can't rely on Cavalry to help them out this weekend. They have to go for all 3 points. Now, I thought I had it here, and I don't. I had a quote from Ottawa. You know what? We'll talk about it later. I will bring it up to Gordon Smith. Yeah, we'll get to it when we talk to Gordon Smith. It'll be more fitting in that little segment where we talk more about Ottawa. We'll talk about the post game comments from players and coaches, and I'll get Gordon's take on it. So stay tuned for that. Forge's home record has improved. They've now been unbeaten over the last several home matches after just failing to pick up enough points at home. They've still left a little too many points on the field at Tim Hortons Field. There's a lot of draws in there, but ultimately, third best home record in the CPL for Forge. Away from home, Atlético Ottawa, nothing spectacular. Bottom half of the league away from home. Head to head, it has been all Forge all the time, mostly. They've played each other 15 times, and in those 15 matches, Ottawa has won once. And what's crazy about that is the losses, a lot of times they feel worse than the wins feel good. You know, the emotion from a loss is just more powerful than a win. It's a very biologically programmed thing. It's helpful. It helps us. It helps us learn. It's beneficial, right? Loss weighs on us because it helps us. It's self-improvement and all that stuff. So it's beneficial. But that one loss, if you asked me to pick out a win against Ottawa and tell me about it, they've beaten Ottawa 11 times. Outside of the CPL final, I couldn't describe a single one of those wins. They were wins. That was it. The one loss to Ottawa, I can remember I can remember everything about that loss to Ottawa. I remember Bassett's goal off a free kick, the blown call, the non-call from the referee, from the official when Ottawa player was along the wall that Forge built. They wasn't allowed to be there. They let him be there anyway. And Ottawa ended up scoring and winning that game 1-0 at Tim Hortons Field. But I remember the loss. I don't remember any of the wins, essentially, or the 3 draws. Head-to-head, though, before we get to head-to-head, Ottawa hasn't won in 7 matches, by the way. This is a team that's fighting for a playoff spot. They have not won a match in their last 7 attempts. I mean, that is collapsing under the pressure a little bit. And they've lost 3 in a row, making matters even worse. Ottawa's given up the first goal in 5 of their last 6. We can go through this all day. They've been struggling. Head-to-head between the clubs this year, Forge won the first 3, and then they played to a draw. Or excuse me. Yes. No, it hasn't happened yet. But Forge won 3 in a row against Atletico to start the year. And this is it. This is the deciding match. Forge ranked number 3 in goals scored per match in the league. They've kept the most clean sheets with 10. Tristan Borges ranked number 2 in big chance creation in the competition. Ottawa ranked 5th in goals, haven't scored in their last 2 matches. But Ollie Bassett is still the CPL's top scorer with 11. He is a one-man. He's the only one. And that'll factor into our 3 keys, believe me. That is really just, it's been Ollie Bassett or bust for Ottawa to this point. While Ollie Bassett is the leading scorer in terms of total number of goals Scoring frequency, goals per minute, number 1 in the CPL. Our very own Rubens Pasillas, averaging a goal every 133 minutes. That is number 1. In fact, 3 of the top 4 scoring frequency players are all from Forge FC. Pasillas is number 1, Jordan Hamilton, number 3, Taron Campbell, number 4. 3 strikers, 3 attackers within the top 4 in terms of goals per minutes played. That is impressive. Ball possession numbers, Forge FC will likely finish the year number 1 again. They're number 1 right now at 54.3%. Ottawa, second worst ball they're at 43%. They're just a smidge above Vancouver FC, the expansion club. Shots on target per match, Forge lead the league 4.8 per match. Ottawa not bad at 4.5, but they do lack some quality, and it's reflective in that stat. I included this one because it's still Forge lead the league in just being unlucky, hitting the post, hitting the woodwork 13 times this year. By comparison, Ottawa's hit it 8 times. So Forge, despite their success this year, their shots on target, they're also number 1 in just kind of being unlucky and hitting the post. Okay, we need to know what is going on in Ottawa. The only man who can deliver is Gordon Smith, color commentator, analyst for TSN 1200 in Ottawa. And he joins the match day preview now. All right, Gordon. Well, first off, welcome back. I think you may hold the record for most appearances on the match day preview. And, we can almost sum up Ottawa's season based on how we've started our chats. It was
pretty much, right?
It's alternated. It's at first we talked about kind of the low expectations in Ottawa, the questions due to some key departures. The next time I asked about the club's slow start. Then we talked about Ottawa's turnaround, and they were actually challenging for the regular season title at one point. Sure. And now we're back to talking about what may be, at least we're close to a pretty substantial collapse. Winless in 7, now out of a playoff position after that loss to York. They now need a win in Hamilton and a York loss or a draw in Vancouver to get into the playoffs. I guess all I'm asking is, how did we get to this point?
Well, I think your collapse comment was spot on. I'd even go as far to say it's almost a collapse of biblical proportions, because nobody, and I mean nobody, certainly not within the fan base, certainly not within the players and staff themselves at Ottawa, and the CPL community as a whole expected Ottawa to really go into the tank that they have with the last 7 games. I mean, 2 points out of 21 is nothing short of abysmal, and collapse definitely is the key word there. If I knew what the reasons were for it, Anthony, I'd be able to go through every single game point by point. But the fact of the matter is, this team just seems to either one of 2 things. They either switch off late in the game and they leave, whether it's mental, mistakes, whether it's just tiredness mistakes, I really don't know. Or it's just a case of this team continues to drive forward to try and pick up 3 points instead of the 1 point that they already had. The old, bird in the hand is worth 2 in the bush type thing. Well, a point in the hand is worth three in the standings, I suppose, if you want to look at it in terms like that. But I think, sort of early on in this late season collapse, when a couple of games were lost in the 94th minute, the 97th minute, and so on, I think it was more or less a case of, we're still trying to drive forward, we're still trying to pick up 3 points that would be so much better in the standings. In the last few games, it's been a case of, look, you had a point, which now looking back, those 5 points that you had as draws would put you in a playoff position almost, right? In fact, it would put you in a playoff position, because you would have been well above York with regards to a separation with them going into the last 3 points of the season. So big picture is you didn't get the job done. There were some games where, like every other sort of loss possible this season, you've had more shots at goal, not necessarily on target, but your build-up play has been good enough. Certainly on the counter, I think that's been one thing that's been a steady and consistent over the course of this run, is that they are getting decent enough chances or opportunities in the box. You look at the score sheet at times, and it's like, 9 shots on target, 14 shots on shots at goal, and you're like, how can you not be turning those into quality opportunities? And I think it's just a case of maybe sometimes it falls to the wrong player at the wrong time in the 18-yard box, and the chances go a-begging. So when you break down this season for Ottawa, the first 8 games of the season, 24 points up for grab. They only took 8 points. Not good enough. The last 7 games, coming into the last game in Hamilton, where they've only won once at Tim Hortons Field in their entire 4 years, whatever. Now, granted, the first year was down east, but doesn't matter. You've still played 5 games. You've only won once. So the signs don't look good. You may pick up a point, but that's of no use to you whatsoever. The last 7 games, 2 out of the last 21 points up for grabs. It was those 12 games in between where you picked up 23 points. That really gave them an opportunity to put themselves in with a playoff shout, and you're thinking, okay, probably a chance to finish maybe even second or third here if we continue with this run. But it's just completely collapsed lately. And, you think back to the post-game conference that took place down in York on the weekend, and Nathan Ingham, that was as raw an interview as I've seen in my few years covering the CPL. And it could indicate that, is that just one man's opinion? Possibly. But it could also indicate that things aren't really just as well with Athleti as we would all hope. And they've got to get it all right. I mean, even a win doesn't necessarily guarantee them a playoff spot. They still have to hope that York goes and drops points themselves. So I think it was rather telling how, Nathan felt and how he went ahead with his comments. And certainly here in Ottawa, there was a lot of buzz around what was said. And who knows, a season offered so much promise after last year, Anthony, could be totally down the drain here in 2023.
And for those that didn't hear it, because that was my next question, what was some of the remarks from goaltender Nathan Ingham? He said, I've been playing over a decade. I've never felt like this. Sickening. It's not a roller coaster of emotions. It's one. It feels like rock bottom. And then asked what his club can do to shake off this feeling and regroup. He said, grow up was his response. And to your point, a lot of times when a player, and it's not like Ingham makes a habit of this. It's kind of a rare moment of just raw honesty. And it's kind of refreshing. I mean, this is kind of what we want out of pro athletes, is to be a little more honest and genuine. And to your point, a lot of times when this happens, especially when it seems like kind of a one-off, you do get the sense that maybe he's also speaking for other players who probably feel, and you're not saying that directly, but a lot of times that is the case. And so where do you go from there? Is it a rallying point? Is it demoralizing? Is it, I guess you can only go one of two ways.
Well, you're exactly right. I mean, is it a rallying point where everybody gets behind each other for the cause and realizes that, listen, we've got an opportunity here to make amends. We're going into a very, very tough place, quite possibly the toughest place that Ottawa has played in the last number of years as a CPL outfit. And to pick up 3 points is going to be very difficult, because you've got to remember that Forge themselves are still fighting for second spot.
Right.
They've got to get a result. And even a draw for them might not be enough. I believe if they draw and Pacific win, then Pacific gets a tiebreaker because of having won one more game. So there's all to play for Forge. I'm sure Ottawa would be hoping that Forge had have won last week and picked up 3 points down in Halifax. It didn't happen. So now they're in a battle not only with York to try and overtake them in the standings, but against Forge, because Forge themselves need to pick up to make sure 100% that they're in that 1v2 sort of automatic game to the championship against Cavalry coming up in a week or so. So all to play for. I think from a rallying point for that Nathan, I think that was what he was trying to do. Maybe he opened up a little bit too much and gave a bit of an insight that possibly behind the scenes things aren't 100%. I'm not saying there's clicks. I'm not saying there's anything there that could be causing issues. But the fact of the matter is, You went from a regular season championship winning team last season. Yes, you lost Becky, you lost Sissoko, you lost Balu, and you lost Brian Wright, who I think sometimes gets forgotten about with his contribution over the course of the 3 or 4 years that he was with Ottawa, scoring big goals, but above all else, leading that line, freeing up space for lads like Haworth and Balu and Bassett and Verhoeven coming in behind him. So it's, I've been asked on local radio, is the team last year better than the team this year or vice versa? My comment's always been, let's wait till the end of the season, because that's, it all comes out in the wash then, doesn't it? But rallying cry, I think Nathan was just trying to G the troops up, but I think really he was trying to maybe just give a little bit of an insight as to how things have gone these last 7 games, and that just mentally they're in a wrong place right now, and just not, maybe, I don't want to challenge their mental strength or anything like that, but you cannot be conceding goals in the 88th minute onward 5 out of your 7 games. That's just
that's wild.
Unheard of. It really, really is.
And where it's kind of a loaded question, but what happens if they miss the playoffs? I mean, what does that mean going into the off season? What kind of change? You'd have to think changes would be made, but it's difficult in a league like this where you don't necessarily get the contract certainty year over year that you do in other. So where does Ottawa go from here if they don't get into the postseason?
Well, that's a really good question. I mean, you could start right from the top on down. Certainly, Atletico Madrid will not be happy that they didn't finish as high as the 5th out of the 8 teams that made the playoffs. Fernando Lopez, I'm sure, might want to look at whatever model they're playing as far as players that they're looking to bring in. I think it has to be said that some of the players that they brought in this year just haven't performed either to their abilities or to, what they were brought in to do. And unfortunately, lads you were looking at to score goals for them haven't scored goals. Lads you were looking at to sort of stop things at the back end from conceding goals haven't happened. I mean, this team right now is sitting in mediocrity. They're 5th in goals scored and 5th in goals conceded. So for a team that's trying to get into the playoffs, that's just not good enough. I mean, you can't chop it any other way, Anthony. It's just you're not scoring enough goals and you're not stopping enough goals. And, the inability for the club to finish. Yeah, it's all well and good scoring 3 goals in 2 or 3 games, but in the crunch, when you need goals against Pacific and it's 1-1, you need goals against Forge and it's 0-0, you need goals against Valor when it's 1-0, you're getting beaten the last kick of the game. It's just not good enough. And, the fans, obviously, if you're watching social media this week, just wouldn't say they're turning on the team, but there's certainly a lot of negativity going on. I think one of the big things that sort of stands out for this week was that there was a busload or 2 that went down. I think somebody said 100 fans that went down to that game in York on the weekend, and there was a big hue and cry about it at the end. There was only, I think, 7 or 8 players that came over and thanked them. Now, there's no given right that, you're the one that's spending your money to go down there. We fully understand that that's a choice you made. But there is an expectation as an away support, and it happens all around the world. As an away support, you do expect your players, win, lose or draw, to come over and at least acknowledge the fact that you're there as an away support, cheering them on. And I think there's a lot of feedback from there that was just not done properly, and a lot of anger, I think, from the supporters group that this season has just completely gotten away from them. That 7 or 8 games ago, they were looking in a really, really good spot. I think at some point, as you said, they were up there, maybe even second at one time, I think, possibly with an opportunity to jump into first place, and it's just completely tanked out. So it's a sad state of affairs. Getting back to your original question, there would have to be changes. Whether it's right at the top, I don't know. That's not for me to say. I'm polishing up my resume as we speak right now, so hopefully maybe I'll get a call to come in. But no, in all seriousness, you can't have a season like last year, Anthony, and then a season like this year and not expect to make changes, because bottom line, it just hasn't been good enough.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Before I let you go, one of my biggest pet peeves in sports is you do get a lot of, it's the criticism of officials refereeing when you know, at the end of the day, I'm a firm believer in most situations through the course of a season, they all kind of even up the calls. You get some, you lose some, you hope so. But I think generally that's kind of what happens. There is a growing frustration though in the CPL. And I think what it comes down to as players, as coaches, no one seems to know what a foul is, what an infraction is, what isn't. And I think at the end of the day, consistency, you're going to have lapses here and there, one-offs. But at the end of the day, consistency is what you're looking for. Even as a fan, you're watching, and I don't even know what a foul is in this league. Yeah. Just as someone who has watched the sport for a very, very long time, has been involved with it for a long time, your impressions of the officiating and the frustration that teams have been having over the officiating.
Well, I think it was just last weekend that Bobby and Kyle Becker came out with comments. Now, these are two very, very experienced individuals that realise, okay, referees are in a tough job to begin with. 50% of the time, every call you make, you're going to be wrong. Hometown or away fans are going to be angry and upset with the call that's been made. So you're off to a loser right off the bat. But I think it's the consistency factor that really comes into play. You know, the comment about, you know, like the quality in this league has been getting better over the last, you know, few years, and, you know, with younger players developing and becoming really good players, and international players coming in and really topping up the quality in this league. And I think the feeling in a few areas is that the quality of refereeing maybe just isn't coming along at the same pace. And you know, that's not for me to claim one way or the other. This is coming from, you know, from people that have been involved in football their entire life at the high level. And it's all well and good fans complaining about it. That's a fan's right as a paying customer to complain, oh, the referee stole a game from us, the referee didn't give us this penalty, the referee, that's what fans do. Players, to a certain extent, you know, whine about it simply because, well, you know, it cost us 3 points, it maybe cost me a win bonus. I'm not talking necessarily CPL, I'm talking around the world. Yeah. It lost me a win bonus. But when you start getting coaches that are well respected and revered around this country making comments about officials, then that somebody has to sit up and take notice. Somebody has to realise that, okay, here we may have a little bit of an issue, and as much as we all like to, you know, think that we're bringing the officiating along the same pace as the players in the league, we might not be there right now, and that might just have to get better. The one thing that really frustrates me, Anthony, and we see this certainly a lot of the games that I've done live at TD Place for Athleti, I know the referees are in communication with each other, but I just wish that the assistant referees would have more authority to make decisions. You watch a game, and the number of times that a free kick or a foul or a call happens right in front of an assistant referee, and he obviously can see that something has happened, whether it's a push in the back, whether it's a late tap, whatever. And it's not until the referee blows the whistle for the foul or for the whatever the call was, that then the assistant referee's flag goes up as if to say, oh yeah, I saw that all along. No, you saw it, you make the call, give the referee some help that I saw it, you've obviously seen my flag to give me the authority to make a call. Too often maybe referees send assistant referees, and I don't know this happens for sure, but I'm almost positive that in some cases the referees might have directions to the assistant referees saying, listen, I just want you to call offsides, just call when the ball goes out, throw-ins, things like that. Let me deal with the major calls. And I think sometimes that is where coaches might look at it and say, you're 5 yards away from this, you're 10 yards away from it. The referee is 40, 50 yards away on the other side of the field. You should be able to make that call that would stop any of this. You know, you missed a call that led to a breakaway counter-attack, that led to a corner kick, that led to a goal. And that was exactly how it was against Cavalry for Ottawa a few weeks ago. there was quite clearly a push in the back on Carl Haworth, right in central midfield. Assistant referee didn't call it. Referee a little bit further away didn't call it. Broke up the field on a counter, won the corner, and that's where the 2-1 winning goal came in. Now, does it matter? I mean, we know VAR isn't in use here in Canada. Should we maybe look at a sort of scaled down version of VAR where there's a monitor at the side, at least with the one soccer feed, Anthony, so that if there's something contentious or debatable, the referee can come over and at least be looking at different angles of a penalty kick or different angles of, anything, a red card, or different angles of ball over a line, anything that's going to give the referee more tools to work with. I'm all for it. If it holds up the game for a minute or two, who cares? Because at the end of the season, as much as it is, and obviously we saw the situation with Liverpool and Spurs on the weekend, ultimately it's supposed to be about getting things right. Well, in that case, it wasn't. And I'm not saying that 100% of the time it would be on a scaled-back version of VAR, but at least allow the referees to possibly go to a monitor right at midfield. And it can be on the other side of the park, away from the fans and away from where the benches are, Anthony, as well. I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be right in front of everyone. Give the referee some time to go away, take a look at the one soccer, maybe be in touch with one soccer and ask for a couple of different angles. Can you roll it back 5 seconds to let me see where the ball... Things like that. Offside is offside. I'm not worried about the offside part of it because we don't have lines, we don't have true VAR. But on things like penalty kicks, things like whether it's inside or outside the box, possibly goal line technology, just something that is going to help our referees have more tools to be able to do their job even better, then I'm all in favour for it. But something somewhere has to happen because, as I said, you can't have elite players and elite coaches in this country, in this league, calling out officials. It's like almost every single game there's one or two coaches and players that are just biting their tongue because they know they're going to be in trouble. And yeah, a 5-0 loss or a 5-0 win, you're not going to complain about the referee. You got gubbed. It's simple as that. But a 1-1, when you can see a penalty 5-10 minutes left to go, that really wasn't a penalty. There was no high foot. There was no, sliding in. You weren't coming in from behind. It was a good tackle, or there was no contact. I think that's the worst that people get upset about. Yeah. There's no contact on what's deemed to be a penalty. And that gets frustrating, and that boils over, and emotions tend to, in the last 5 minutes, where, you've got a little bit of payback, a little bit of payback, a little bit of redemption. It's just unfortunate that a league that is now, let's be honest, very, very tight. We're now looking at 6 from 8. We started with 8 from 8, looking to make the playoffs. We went down to 5 to 8 when Ballard, 6 of 8 when Ballard and Vancouver were pretty much eliminated, and now it's 1 of 2. You're basically down to York or Ottawa making the playoffs. A league that is this tight can swing a point here, a point there, 2 points there on a call that unfortunately everybody that's watching it on TV can see that it really was incorrect. Give them a little bit of help, give them a little bit of support, give them a monitor at halfway to go and look to make... it could still be the wrong decision, but if the referee is 100% sure in his mind his call was correct, and what he's seeing, he's pretty sure it's backing up his call, then that's fine. But just to be going with what's on field and then it gets replayed over and over and over again, it didn't lead to a goal. It didn't lead to anything. But there was an incident, I think maybe 6 or 7 games ago, where Ottawa had a corner kick. And the corner kick was played, I think it was Iliadis played the ball to Ollie Bassett. And Ollie actually sort of dribbled the ball away from the corner, and the flag went up for offside. And everybody's sort of like, okay, well, what really happened? Did possibly Ollie play the ball for? I don't know. We all know you can't be offside from a corner kick. Yeah. And I think it was Carl Haworth that was actually going spare on the assistant referees. You can't be offside from a corner kick. So it was just again, it's one of those things that just highlights, unfortunately, maybe we're just not there quite yet with the quality of officiating being as good as the quality of play that we're seeing on the field week in, week out.
And that's a key point, because this is also, it's still a newish league. It's a smaller league.
Yeah.
You're still battling for relevancy in a lot of these cities where they're competing with, bigger teams that have been around for a long time and have more tradition. And you don't, as a fan even, and you're watching and you're seeing officiating like this, there are times when you start to, everyone's working their butt off on the pitch, and then a call like that, it makes it, I'm not saying it is amateur, but it makes it look like that sometimes. And optics matter.
It does. And let me be 100% clear. Under no circumstances, zero, and I'm going to say that again, zero, should referees be taking any sort of verbal abuse, face-to-face criticism. It just should not happen. There should be zero. In fact, there should be maximum repercussions if that does happen, where a referee feels threatened physically or verbally, anything along those lines. But I would just like to see us give them a little bit more help and support with tools. And for my money, a scaled back version of VAR where they themselves get to go look at replays on the television would help them. They may not agree, Anthony, and the CSA and the Referees Association may think, nah, that's rubbish. Fair enough. I'm just giving my pundit's opinion as to what I think would help them, and I would like to see it possibly implemented next year. Because we know we don't have the money for VAR, and we know we don't have the money to be employing, maybe the fourth official could be the one that looks at it. Between the fourth official and the referee, they're the one that can talk amongst themselves to make a decision rightly or wrongly. But I would like us to optically, I'd like to see some sort of an attempt being made to drag things back to more of an even field between officiating and between players and coaches. And I've got some of my really good friends are referees and assistant referees and referee assessors. So I'm right in there with the refereeing community as far as taking their side of it in a lot of cases. But sometimes when decisions made are just so out of order, so wrong, you've got to say, okay, we need to do something to help these people. We really do.
Yeah. I do not envy. I would do terrible in that position. I don't like being yelled at, so I'm too sensitive. So I would never be able to. So I appreciate that part of it. But all great points. Gordon Smith, you've been fantastic all year, accommodating, insightful. You bring it every time, and I appreciate that.
Oh, cheers, Paul. My pleasure as always, and good luck to Forge this weekend. Hopefully Ottawa picks up the 3 points, because I got to tell you what, York's got a tough game out in Vancouver, because you're looking at under 21 minutes now, and you possibly might have to have a lad that would not be a starter having to play and pick up minutes for you to make sure you get over that 2,000 threshold. Halifax in the same boat, but Halifax are already in the playoffs. I tell you what, Halifax have an outside shot of finishing second. If they happen to take care of their game on the weekend, Forge loses, or even, I can't sure it's Forge lose or draw, and Pacific lose or draw, there's an opportunity that Halifax does have, albeit outside, that they could go into that 1v2 game as well. So good luck to everyone playing this weekend. Certainly from my standpoint, I hope Ottawa's able to pick up 3 points and York drop points out in Vancouver, but in the end, it's all about getting the teams that deserve to be in the playoffs, Anthony, in the playoffs. And if Forge end up being second, then that 1v2 game is going to be absolutely fantastic out in Calgary coming up in a little while.
If nothing else, we were provided an exciting season, and a season that came right down to the wire, which is it's all you can ask for.
It's what they wanted. It's what they wanted when they put five teams in, right? That's for sure.
Absolutely. All right. Well, you take care.
You too, my friend. All the best and take care. It's been great talking to you all year, and hopefully we get a chance to do it.
All right, Forge fans, your 3 keys to the match in the regular season finale for Forge FC, needing 3 points to secure second place. Here's how they can do it. Key number 1, simple. Just keep the train moving. This might be the laziest key I've ever given, but Forge really, they just need to do what they've been doing. They've hit their stride at the perfect time, and they need to bring their brand of front foot soccer to Tim Hortons Field on Saturday. Top guys are playing like top guys. They're defending well, and they've been unflappable. lately. Despite the in-match adversity they've faced over the last month or so, they just need to keep the train moving. Key number 2 for Forge. On the ropes, Atlético Ottawa on the verge of a massive, massive collapse. Despite threatening a top 2 finish for large chunks of the season, Ottawa's gone winless in 7, including a loss to York in the dying seconds last week, leaving them now outside the playoff picture. This is not a confident club right now. And a quick start that includes an opening goal, just lean, pour on the pressure. Just they're not in a good spot. Keep that feeling going. An opening goal, I mean, it would be pretty demoralizing for Ottawa, and it would go a long way. I mean, opening goals are important. It is extra important. This weekend, Ottawa's on the ropes. Forge does not need to help them up. Key number 3 for Forge FC, Bottle Bassett. The league's leading scorer, despite the club's struggles. Ollie Bassett still at the top of that stat. And if Ottawa's going to find some level of heroism on Saturday, you have a feeling it's going to come from Ollie Bassett. And he is the heartbeat. He keeps this team alive. Forge have to make sure Bassett is bottled. Get in his face, take away his space. Don't give up any cheap fouls in dangerous areas. He's very good on set pieces. If Ottawa is going to revive their season, force them to do it without their captain's production. Those are your 3 keys. forgefc.ca/tickets. You're going to want to be there live. Listen, this is what I'm here to help you. You are going to regret not being there live, watching Forge, and also checking your phone to see if Pacific. It's just an all of it exciting afternoon. And I mean, 5:00. What a perfect time on a Saturday. You still have your Saturday night. Everything is lining up. Everything is lining up in your favor. You will want to be there live. I will be there, and I hope to see you there. Don't forget, though, following the match on Saturday, you will get an instant match in review. You hear that final whistle, head on over to the Forge FC YouTube channel, and we will break it all down for you. Hopefully, we will be able to use that time to preview a bit Forge's upcoming playoff match against Calgary. That's best case scenario. Listen, we've said all we've said it all. All that's left is for this match to be played. We will talk to you very, very soon.
Forge FC is prepared, and now you are informed. This has been Match Day Preview with Anthony Urciuoli on the Forge Audio Network. Subscribe on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts.